Welcome in, special edition. Hail to the podcast here on a Friday afternoon. Hope everybody had a great holiday. Obviously, still in the midst, New Year's coming, but we're here live because we have news. The Michigan coaching search appears to have come to an end. No official announcement from Michigan yet, but all things considered, done deal. We're going to discuss it. Kyle Whittingham, likely the next head coach here, Michigan football. We're going to talk about how we got here, what's next, our thoughts moving forward, expectations. And then some of the spin that we kind of expect to happen coming out of this as well, too. And obviously, those of you joining us live here on YouTube, we'll take your questions, make you part of the conversation as well. And if you're listening back to this on playback or watching this back, make sure you're going to YouTube, searching Maize and Blue Review, liking, subscribing, notification bell, so you know when we go live with shows like this one. Hey, I did it in a minute. All right. Joined as always with me today, Intel Insider, Mr. Maize and Blue Review himself, publisher Josh Henschke, and special guest. He's been on a couple times with us, and him and I have the Victor's Weekly podcast. Hopefully, we'll be able to get that back in flow shortly.
More regularity next season.
Yeah. My good friend Nick Coston. You guys may know him as Big Boutros on the message boards. All right, Josh. Other than tired and a headache, which I know you and I have been complaining to each other about sharing. You obviously, you were brutally sick during this coaching search. So other than feeling a little bit better, how are you feeling today? As I know at midnight we were starting to discuss some of the Whittingham news, but as things have trended that direction here today.
Yeah, no, I feel good about where things, were going and are heading now. And now there's kind of a clear path ahead of what's next. So, obviously there's, coaching staff stuff to figure out and track down ahead. But, the biggest hurdle and obstacle is out of the way. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot to like, feeling good about the direction of where this is headed, and definitely, worth the wait. What was it, like 2.5 weeks, 2-ish weeks, whatever.
Felt like 2 months.
Yeah, it felt like 2 months. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, I'm feeling good.
Nick, I know you literally took a break when we got into, and I'll kind of highlight that path in a moment here, but you took a break after I don't even remember, the playoff game with Alabama and Oklahoma, and things kind of seemed to hit the reset button. But it speaks a lot to Josh and I talked about, your highs and lows of going through this coaching search and what's real and what's not. And then when you get done and you go back, there's kind of just this clear, consistent line, and it all kind of just makes sense. But obviously we're still unpacking how we got here completely. But
yeah, you're right. And, the break, I think, came from the fact that, you can't even call it a fact. This idea that on Friday night, prior to the conclusion of the Alabama-Oklahoma playoff game, and then Saturday morning, Kenny Dillingham announced he signed the extension. So Friday morning, we were all sort of in this scenario where plans A, B, and C were Kalen DeBoer, Kenny Dillingham, and Jed Fish. And overnight, it all shifted. And so that was when I was like, I think I need some oxygen here and learn a little bit about what we're really doing. So, the bottom line is that the timing of the vacancy was about as bad as it gets for Michigan, right? And I think this is going to be a longer conversation about what Michigan is going from in Chiron Moore to what they're going to have now. But regardless of who's vacating the seat, when it's the second week of December, and the carousel everywhere else in the country, the carousel has already ended. And now you find yourself as one of the biggest programs in the country having to make an emergency hire, essentially, in a narrow window of time because of the way that the playoff schedule works and the portal schedule works and signing day works.
it's a mess. Yeah.
It is an incredible mess that was thrust upon Michigan. And I with the news that's breaking, not only of Kyle Whittingham as the head coach, but the kind of budget he's going to have, the kind of staff he's bringing, the kind of programs that he's going to be able to tap into. It's not just University of Utah. It's also BYU in-state. It's also names that we might recognize from the Big Ten footprint, Michigan and Ohio. The fact that this is able to come together in a single afternoon, the day after Christmas, is I think I don't know. It's a testament to something and somebody. But go blue.
Yeah. I think it's, looking back on it now, can I say this like it's been this long journey, but again, knowing we had a suggestion from somebody on the board about writing an article about what these search firms actually do, right? And turnkey in this situation. And Nick, you obviously have good information and good contact involved with who was running that. And there was kind of this sentiment like, oh my gosh, what do they do? And it's like, guys, you don't see what they do. Right. So I wrote this article and did kind of a deep dive into the process. And that I found that really informative to me, as well as I know our board was like, okay, this makes me feel a little bit better. And you start to realize like how much stuff is agent driven. Right. So I think it's fair to say, and Josh, we reported on this, like jumping in, it was DeBoer was 1A, maybe even 1B, make him say no was the argument. Dillingham was the next name. And then Jed Fish was considered the floor. Yeah. And when I say floor, I know some people hear like bottom, but to me, that just means the higher won't get below this, right? Like this is the floor, might not be the right word, but that was the cutoff. Like we're not going below Jed Fish. And then it felt like
you wouldn't have turned it down if offered.
Right. Maybe that's the better way to put it. This is the guy you have, right?
Yep.
And then you get into that Thursday, Friday, like Nick said, Michigan chooses not to offer Kenny Dillingham, and the DeBoer situation with a win. I don't know if we'll ever get the full clarity on this until somebody shows me or proves me that there was renewed interest or that DeBoer was very willing. Part of me still feels like this was just a rehashing of 2024 and the sentiment that DeBoer was moving back channels to potentially come to Michigan. And then by the time Jim leaves, Chiron Moore, DeBoer's at Alabama already and whatever. And it never seemed to line up for me in this idea of waiting, right? I'm going to apologize to you because Josh and I are both looking at our phones a ton throughout this. I've just gotten 2 messages. But anyway,
you look at your phone.
That reset felt like to me, and you guys tell me what you feel like. To me, it felt like Whittingham took over the Fish spot. And then there was just this idea of like, are we going to continue to wait for DeBoer? Or the search firm has obviously now generated a bunch of names doing their job. How does that process out? That's what it felt like to me, at least.
Well, I think when it came to reassessing DeBoer after the Friday night Oklahoma game, it seems material to the conversation that I basically heard 3 different avenues as a result of Alabama winning that game. One person told me that likely shuts the door. It would be exceptionally unlikely for DeBoer to continue entertaining a Michigan offer at that point. Michigan needed Alabama to lose the game in order for that courtship to be a possibility.
Yeah.
At the other end of the spectrum, I was also told that it was completely immaterial, that until and unless Alabama won the national championship, as soon as Alabama's season ended, Kalen DeBoer would be the next Michigan head coach. And then, of course, being a Goldilocks thing, there was a third person who said, just for transparency's sake, the number was 75%. Now, I don't know how people arrive at a number like that with a coach agreeing to leave one team and join another team, but it was a range. There was, window closed. Window doesn't exist. He's coming to Michigan unless they win the national title and all the heat is off him. And then probably the truth lying somewhere in the middle was like, this is his dream job. This is what he wants. The timing is not perfect, but if Alabama's able to lose in time, then we're going to have, the inside track. Call that 75%. But we'll never find out. I mean, it's just not what came to pass.
The timing thing is so funny, Josh, because I think about Jim Harbaugh's name in 2011, Kyle Whittingham's name probably back to 2011 as well, right? Like he's a guy obviously coached at Utah for a long time that's been out there. And I've seen some people too, and we'll probably get into the age piece of it. But like if Whittingham had been the hire after Jim left,
yeah,
how much more excited I think people would have been at the time too, right? But like with any hire, right? As soon as it happens, you look into it more, you start to talk yourself into this and that. But for us, immediately the coaching staff piece of it and some of the nuggets we've been hearing from that, I know has been super intriguing too. And you just think about a lot of it's situational too. When you look at what Michigan's situation is on the football team, in the athletic department, all the way up to president, which we can talk about too, but like he feels like the right guy in terms of culture fit for this moment. However long that moment ends up being, but
yeah, I think you can say that Michigan did very well in this search and also made the safe pick at the same time. I think I think he's one of the very few guys where you could say, all right, that's the safe pick. That this will stabilize Michigan for a couple of years, and then you can kind of maybe, however long down the line, you want to go with Whittingham, then you reassess, do you have a plan in place to replace him, or do you open it up nationally? I mean, I can't tell you, what the future looks like. And I don't know if the same people who are involved in this coaching staff, or excuse me, coaching search are going to be involved in the next one. But, does anyone learn their lesson from the Chiron Moore stuff? It's impossible to tell, but what matters is the right here and right now. And I've seen this phrase be used a lot of time, a lot throughout the day, is that they hired the adult in the room, and I think that was really what Michigan needs right now. And I think one of the biggest issues that this team had this year was discipline. The fine details that were so just hammered home under Harbaugh and what they did so well, that has been missing. And, Whittingham and Harbaugh are very similar in terms of, that hard ass gruff coach that not necessarily abrasive, but is not going to put up a lot of crap. Like if you're going to be late to a meeting, you're not going to be coddled. Just because you're the star wide receiver or whatever, just for an example. But I think this stabilizes a lot of things for at least the immediate future. And the thing with college football now is you're not looking down the road. You're looking here and now. I mean, Indiana's proved that you can turn around a program in a year, an off season for that matter. So, with the resources that Michigan's going to have available for Whittingham, I mean, you don't have to ask, well, when is this going to happen? Like, when is his success that he had at Utah, when is that going to translate to Michigan? And really, you can think about it, if they make the right move, the hiring moves in terms of staff and bring in, portal guys and all that kind of stuff, there's no reason why Michigan can win 10 games next year if they can keep obviously some key guys together and all that stuff. But I mean, when you think about it, Michigan was competing for a college football playoff spot in the last week of the regular season, despite all of the crap that was happening behind the scenes and all of that stuff. They were this close to being, the punching their ticket for the CFP. So now you got a guy that can eliminate all those distractions and is not doing stuff, behind the scenes. You've got a renewed focus there. Anything can happen. And you'd have to think that, Michigan is in a spot to be very competitive in the Big Ten now and into the immediate future.
Go ahead.
I think, well, you can't overstate how. I mean, I don't want to phrase it like anyone would be an upgrade, even though that's literally the case.
I mean, knowing what we
is
know
important
now, what
is
26 would have looked like, that's fair.
As I've chatted with my friends offline, we've sort of agreed that we have a lack of vocabulary to really describe the state of the program under Chiron Moore in the final days. It is an unprecedented crash out, an unprecedented failure. And so to shed that is addition by subtraction. And then to Josh's point, to take that vacuum and make a hire that is being unanimously lauded as not only competitive, but responsible, mature, the kind of person that Michigan needs right now. All in the context of really unfortunate timing in the college football calendar. You know, I hate to quote Jim Tressel because he was sort of saying this in a different context, but when he was hired at Ohio State, his first remarks were, this is going to be a football team that you're going to be proud of on the practice field, in the classroom, and most importantly, 300 days from now in Ann Arbor, Michigan. It's a similar day, you know. That search was regarded until Tressel succeeded in his role. When that hire was announced, he was a plan D, and he was too old. He had spent too much time at Youngstown State. It was a layup and a lazy hire, and you saw what happened. So I'm after months of disappointment, I think, in the maturity levels of the leader of the program, not the kids, not the players, because to be clear,
Right.
this is probably the most impressive 9-3 season of all time, because you basically had a roster of freshmen and sophomores carrying themselves in terms of discipline and motivation to the 9-3 record. Knowing what we know now about the head coach, his personal behavior, it's remarkable that they were able to do this. So I think they deserve this hire, this adult in the room. And part of recruiting is going into the living rooms of families, mothers and fathers, and telling them, like, our school, our university, our program is going to take care of your son. And I think today is a step towards being able to have that conversation honestly again. For sure.
Yeah, and I mean, we could get off the rails talking about what we know now, because I saw some people talk. The term I saw thrown out there, and I've spoken about this already, but about the Michigan submarine, and it's so true. I referenced Nick Baumgartner's tweet right after this happened, and Josh and I can speak to this as well as anybody. But when you insulate yourself, in whether your goal is to protect yourself or not, when you insulate yourself, nothing gets out either. And it creates this culture where people maybe don't feel comfortable saying things either. Right. So we reported on the Moore Wink disagreement and the blow up that occurred and what that likely meant for the future.
Oh yeah.
But
that even happened.
Yeah. And now the context, right. But now the context of that argument looks very different.
Yeah.
Right. And chasing down the rumors part too. We've explained this piece a bunch about what we could or couldn't say, but inevitably, almost every time it ended with somebody, and I've talked to other, beat folks about this. David Cohn said the exact same thing, like verbatim, like it would end with somebody telling you, nah, this isn't true. It's just people going after more. Or even to the point of there was an investigation. It's fine. Right. So like, yeah, that part, it'll be interesting to see moving forward how that evolves and changes as well, because that's not a Chiron Moore problem. Right. Was he a symptom of it? Blah, blah, who knows? But, Whittingham coming in with his level of experience running a program, obviously a bigger deal at Michigan and the resources. But again, from a coaching hire, every time I was looking at potential fits and I thought about staff, I knew like there had to be some level of retention with the Michigan staff that's currently here, but then kind of also like who needs to go. Like it's an awkward conversation to have, right? But who can they bring with them? Whatever. Mm-hmm. Part of the reason,
yeah, I mean, just look, when the hire is announced, or at least it leaks like this, as a fan, your mind sort of trends towards blooming, not dooming. You say, why is this actually like plan A? Why is this actually awesome?
Yeah.
And so the head-to-head is sort of like, well, Kalen DeBoer's team was 116th in rushing this year.
Yeah.
Whereas Kyle Whittingham's team at Utah this year was 7th in FEI and top 10 in SP+, was this rushing monster on the ground. And That's encouraging. I forget. That wasn't really a segue from what Trevor was saying, but I guess I was looking at some of the comments
kind
that
of is.
we're not necessarily popping them up, but I think some of the comments that are popping up here are reasonable. And I think it's, I know how to tie the two together is, again, because of the difficulty of the timing, making the hire that you want to make to have the best head coach in place, but also retain the guys that you need to retain that are some of the best sort of incumbent assistants at your program already. Promising start. You know, obviously it's not this. There hasn't been anything from the university itself, but everything that's coming out today suggests he's bringing studs. He's going to retain guys like Tony Alford, and you know, to the extent that like there are good things.
I had a feeling this would happen while we're on the pod, so there you go. Officially announced, Kyle Whittingham has agreed to a 5-year deal to become Michigan's. That's the tweets I'm getting. Michigan's next head coach. 5-year deal should be announced later today from Michigan, but yeah it's done. Yep. So there you go.
Yeah, that's been pretty much the expectation all day, was that it was going to get done and likely announced depending on timing and stuff. So, I mean, there's still a possibility that this thing kind of trickles into tomorrow morning in terms of waiting on an announcement, but
it would only be Michigan if it trickled.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
But yeah, so the coaches we've heard, it's so funny reading. I'm always interested in a coaching hire, like, because we're getting different comments, even the people in here, right? I always like looking at where he came from. How are those folks reacting, right? And there are a lot of Utah fans who are like, wait, this has gone from he was retiring to maybe he was kind of pushed out to wait, he's taking staff and players. What in the world is happening?
Right. So, right.
I think that his offensive coordinator, who was only there for a year, came from New Mexico, replaced longtime coordinator Andy Ludwig. We've largely heard his name mentioned. And then Jay Hill, the defensive coordinator at BYU, who was at Utah for a long time because Kalani, when he went to BYU, just took a bunch of Utah folks with him. So there's been that kind of vibe. And you brought up Tony Alford. How do I want to word this? He himself has tweeted something that I think is pretty obvious as well.
But players,
it's all been confirmed to me that I spoke to a recruit. It's all been confirmed that Alford will be back. Obviously, that needs to actually happen. But if you told me out the gate, like, what's the head coach got to do first? Great OC hire, great DC hire, and keep Alford would probably be my top 3 goals. So assuming those boxes get checked, I like where it's trending with those.
Yeah, names. I mean, days ago, if you float Whittingham's name, the sort of pause that you might feel as a fan is like, well, he's pushed out or he's semi-retired. Like, is this going to be sort of a lazy gig for him? No. And here you look, what's happened, what Whittingham coming to Michigan and bringing guys like Beck and Hill is sort of what Harbaugh did to Michigan on his way to the Chargers, where it's like, Morgan Scally, I believe, is the name of the defensive coordinator who's now going to take over as head coach. And so that's the continuity hire that
it's actually
kind of sees all the continuity go out the door with them.
When Oklahoma kind of pushed Stoops out because they didn't want to lose Lincoln Riley, but Morgan is not Lincoln Riley. Right? Like,
well, I don't know anything about Morgan Scally. I think that the excitement level for Michigan fans skyrockets up when you realize it's not Kyle Whittingham coming for a vacation. I mean, he
wants to win.
Stud OC and DC players, staff. Jason Beck, I think, is perhaps the most exciting name we've heard all day, but a word of caution, right? Let's not pencil Jason Beck in as the next Michigan head coach, because now this is back to back at Utah, back to back at Utah and Michigan, where the head coach in waiting has sort of blown up. So excited to see his offense under head coach Kyle Whittingham, and we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Yeah, I think we should absolutely just destroy the phrase head coach in waiting.
Yeah, it doesn't
forever. Nuke it into existence, and then just kind of cross, the bridge once you get to that point, whenever Whittingham decides to move on. I don't know if you go, if you go national search after this, the likelihood of you sticking with your guy is probably pretty low unless you get told no by everyone. But I don't think you should close yourself off for other opportunities or other candidates down the line. So I don't. I like the fact that you could, bring in Jason Beck to, what he plans to do with his offense. You're talking about a pure dual threat type of system kind of guy, which really plays into Bryce Underwood's strengths. But I think that's kind of been the key for Whittingham in terms of, what the offenses look like the past forever, with him. He's had offensive coordinators that are willing to adapt to your guys and not say, we're running this scheme, whether you like it or not. And I think they do that at the quarterback position really well. And if you look at what Dampier did this year, and kind of, not necessarily translate that into what Bryce will do next year, but both those guys play very similar types of, they play very similar. And so I think, not necessarily say that's the floor or ceiling or whatever, but you can add kind of a more refined passing attack to what is probably going to be a pretty good rushing attack next year for Michigan anyway. I think they're in a good spot. Just kind of have to button up a couple of things through the portal and keep guys around, obviously. But I think, it doesn't have to be splashy. It just has to be good. And it just has to be good. And I think this is kind of, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, Michigan, hit a home run with Whittingham, because we'll ultimately find out whether it's a home run or not a couple years down the line. But, did Michigan kind of stumble itself upward, kind of fail upward for this? Yeah, they did. But they shouldn't have to. They shouldn't have to apologize for that. I mean, it was fortunate enough that Whittingham was available. And I think he's the right guy at the right time. I mean, the timing was awful. You weren't going to get a lot of high profile guys because half of those guys already signed extensions. So, for the time being, right in the right here, right now, I think the positives far, far outweigh the negatives right now as things stand.
Real
quick.
Nick, real quick.
Oh,
Sorry.
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Just trying to reel everything in. We knew a player meeting was going to be scheduled for today. That seems to be out there per Nikos. I spoke to a commits parent earlier, and I'm seeing kind of some similar recording. I don't think we're going to see Whittingham come to Ann Arbor. I think he's going to go to Orlando.
Yeah,
and join the team, and then we'll see some stuff after that. But yeah, he's going to meet with. So he's going to meet with the players first down in Orlando, and then we'll probably see press conference basketball type introduction stuff later. Timing and weather seems to be a factor in that, but anyway.
Yep.
So the timing was not fortuitous for Michigan to have this vacancy, but the timing was also interesting. Why is Kyle Whittingham not even the Utah head coach anymore? And I don't know if Utah people are watching this or if they can chime in or whatever. They come to the Maize and Blue Review, sign up, post on the board. But my understanding is that Utah Athletics recently inked some sort of private equity deal that the Utes IP would have a private equity arm to it. And Whittingham was opposed to this. And in the course of his opposition, the PE firm chimed in that he was getting long in the tooth and that Morgan Scalley's time had come. He had waited long enough, and it was time to make that transition. While Kyle Whittingham, insisted he had gas left in his tank. So he didn't retire, obviously. He didn't resign specifically to take the Michigan job like Lane Kiffin from Ole Miss to LSU. He said, in his own words, I think he said, I'm in the portal, right? When the decision was made, and it wasn't clear if it was mutual or not. So life is all about timing. And I think the timing for Michigan to have this really unfortunate vacancy, but also one of, by some measurements, the 10 best college football coaches in the country with a 20-year head coaching record. He's just sitting there. He's ready to slide right in. He's still he's not ready to go. And so, timing works both ways.
Yeah, and I also think there's a real possibility too that he was forced out, and that kind of pissed him off a little bit and kind of reignited that spark. So you're not there's a very, very good possibility that you're getting a highly motivated Kyle Whittingham to succeed in Ann Arbor, to kind of prove to not only himself but to everyone else that he's still got it, hasn't lost his fastball, so to speak. So yeah, I mean, maybe there wasn't much interest in pursuing things at the start, and then once things kind of worked out however they did at Utah, that kind of reignited this spark, and I think that only stands to benefit Michigan to have a motivated Whittingham. Who knows how long the motivation lasts. Coaches are wired differently. They're not normal people, so they find like the littlest things to get motivated about. So who knows how long the ride lasts, but the fact that you're likely getting a pretty pissed off Whittingham and a fiery guy that's kind of found his spark, I think that only stands to benefit.
Yeah, fiery Whittingham, a fully stacked staff with both high scoring minds like Beck and a guy from BYU and Hill, plus the incumbents like Alford. I have a specific question for you guys, like a really drill down football question, which is, it sounds like Whittingham's offensive line coach, and I forget his name. Is it Jim Harding?
Jim Harding, yep.
It sounds like Jim Harding is coming. He's an Ohio native. His wife is from Michigan, wants to get back. He's arguably the best offensive line coach in the country. But Grant Newsome, poor Grant Newsome, who had his phone stolen and hacked by Matt Weiss, he can't get a normal coworker. I mean, amidst all of this, he's still, 27, 28, 29 years old. He's really doing his best. Do you guys see Grant Newsome sticking around as a Harding apprentice, or goes back to tight ends, or does he just have to go and make his own way now?
I mean, no idea. And right, that's going to be the tough part about this, is there's going to be coaches that are well liked around Michigan circles. Whatever. I mean, not everybody's going to stay, right? Harding is one of the few obvious ones, because a lot of these guys you're looking at, you're talking about people that have very strong ties, not only to Utah or BYU, but the Utah region, right? Especially when you factor in the religious angle of it. So that's an interesting piece of it. Harding is one of the few, long time assistants to Whittingham where you go, oh, here's a guy, like you said, born and raised in Ohio, played at Toledo, actually coached some high school football around the Detroit area at Troy for a little bit. Like, it's just a move that makes a lot of sense. He's got a long list of success of not only just recruiting, but also developing players that have done well at the college level and the NFL level. It makes a ton of sense. Does Newsome accept an analyst role in this world where the analyst isn't truly an analyst? No, I don't think so. I don't know why he would. Does he move to tight end? Right away, that seems obvious. But then when you realize Kyle's brother, Freddie Whittingham, has been a tight end coach for a decade. And
he's also Utah's recruiting coordinator.
Right. And nepotism aside, right, has a great record as a tight end coach and recruiter. And actually, speaking to somebody, a parent, that's one of the most exciting pieces, is the way tight ends are used in Utah, right? So, like, could he stay at Utah? His brother come to Michigan? Sure. But, like, you start pushing down.
Sorry, I just saw a comment. Is Kerry Coombs staying? Kerry Coombs,
what a massive payday if he's not.
Kerry Coombs hired by the Gooner like 24 hours before his life exploded.
I mean, they'd have to pay him if he's not. So
yeah.
I mean, on my coaching staff list, I mean, there's an interesting scenario where he's helping out in the secretary at special teams. I have no idea. And he's a guy with Urban Meyer connections as well, like Alford has. I know the the Whittingham Urban Meyer thing is played up a little bit too much because they only spent a couple years together at Utah. And then obviously he moved on and Whittingham took over the head coach, but you don't have to search long to find Urban Meyer saying positive things about Whittingham as well. So yeah, look, that'll be an interesting piece of it as, these guys start to get plugged in, and Hill on the defensive side, what of his guys would he want to bring with him, and what guys at Michigan are must keep, if that's, I don't know if that's the right term. I know our Steve Wiltfong over at Rivals already got some positive comments from Carter Meadows. He appears to be locked in because of Kyle Whittingham. There's going to be other players and recruits that are maybe more locked into the position coach than they are the head coach. And there's going to be players and recruits that are very locked into Michigan and don't really care who the head coach is, right? We've talked about that too, where Michigan kind of recruits itself. And honestly, even the way Chiron Moore and the staff recruited for Michigan, right? By playing that long game, you're getting recruits now that are like, look, I spent a lot of time figuring this out. I love the campus, the school, whatever. Like, I'm staying with Michigan unless, so as long as the communication has been there, which it has until, the last few days when Biff threw a grenade on the ground. I think we'll see some calm again, continue to stay with the team and things settled on. Yeah, some guys are going to jump in the portal. That's inevitable. And it was probably going to, honestly, again, no one
would have happened with KDB too. Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't matter.
I forget what I was going to say. Something about recruits. Oh, yeah. One of the great corollaries in college sports is how mad does this make the other team's message boards?
Right. That's why.
And Michigan is actually getting a 2-for-1 here because both the Utah and the BYU boards are going, oh, shoot. So nice upgrades.
Yeah. I think, taking it back to Newsom real quick, I like the guy, but I think he's probably better served somewhere else for greener pastures and just some peace in his life, considering kind of like the hectic last couple of years he's had and what he's experienced in offensive meeting rooms. And you know what, if it really came down to it and he really, really needed a lifeline, Jim Harbaugh would hire that dude in a second in LA.
Yeah.
So I don't think
tried to actually.
Yeah. Yeah. And he tried to. Yeah. So, I think from an immediate standpoint, I think Jim Harding is a massive, massive upgrade. You're talking about one of the best offensive line coaches in the country. This guy's about to have both of his tackles taken in the first round of this draft. He just fits. He fits what Michigan is about. He was described to me as an animal. And so in both recruiting and, just the way he coaches and conducts himself. And I think, and again, I'm not trying to like compare him to Grant or whatever, or anything like that. But I think Michigan needs that nastiness. And that's kind of when things turned on the offensive line, is when you got guys in there, the Guarneras, the Blake Frazier's and all that brought that nastiness that they didn't really have to begin the year. And that's kind of when the tide turned a little bit. So, if Harding appears to be the guy, I think Michigan fans should be thrilled, because like this is like, this would be like hypothetically saying like with Chiron as a offensive line coach, minus everything aside, what you thought of Chiron Moore as an O-line coach, that'd be going from him to Jim Harding, right? And thriving, in terms of development. So I think that'd be a huge move. We'll kind of see if this gets over the finish line here.
I see exactly what you're saying.
Quick,
imagine
Nick,
if you could make 2022
Nick,
Chiron with no gooning.
Sorry, Nick, this is going to happen a few times. Speaking of offensive line, Malachi Lee, who was considered possibly somebody who could flip away from Michigan. Great news. He is locked in to Michigan. His father spoke to
Frankly, he probably likes this staff better.
Well, so this is a funny fact, and these things always come up, but he said he loves Coach Witt, type of coach Michigan needs right now, hard-nosed, grit, builder of men. He is one of the coaches that traveled to Hawaii to see Lee as well. That was a big deal for Lee and his family, with Chiron Moore and Newsom making that trip. But fun fact, I'm not going to try and say their names because I would butcher them, but at least 3 players played at Utah that are either cousins or some sort of family member to Malachi Lee.
Yeah.
So
Whittingham's done really, really well with the Samoan type of player that they connect really well. I mean, BYU does too. It's obvious.
A lot of his uncles and cousins played for him.
Yeah. So funnily enough, they're probably more excited about this hire than they were already being excited about playing for Chiron and Grant.
Yeah.
So that's a big win. That's a big win. That kid's going to be a stud.
All right. In the comments, Ralph Rutabaga, we have to talk about Biff.
Do we?
Okay.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, if you'd rather not blow it up, that's fine by me. It's your show.
No, people know what you said. Go ahead.
I'll put it this way. Like I don't really think Biff should be the bowl coach. Like go. Biff is a bad dude.
The comment, the going on the Texas podcast and some of those comments that were made in the last couple of days, aside from
I've got something funny to mention about that after we're done.
Okay.
About that.
Aside from what you can speak on, my gut was I can't believe they let him go on that. Josh and I knowing the process that's involved speaking to anybody Michigan.
Oh, he probably went rogue. I'll guarantee you.
No, he did. We know he did. There's no way they let him go on that show. And then, just some of the comments about, I don't know how many people are going to stick around. And I know players and recruits were caught off guard by that. I know we were because it was a day after what he had said at the podium. And it just...
Dave Obloff is really, really good at his job. And he has
unbelievable.
had a very hard job the last 10 years. He would never.
Sometimes I talk about Dave. I like to bring up the story of us posting a video that was 13 seconds longer than we're allowed and getting a contact. And that can come off like what a jerk or neurotic or blah, blah, blah. But oh my gosh, like that's how good he is at his job. And I brought that up in the context of someone else claiming that a statement made by Dave was fake. And I'm like, if that was fake and somebody misrepresented him, I promise you he would have gotten to the bottom of it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So Dave is phenomenal at what he does. No way around that. And so for that to get out there the way it did was uncomfortable to say the least. And I think Michigan, maybe the holiday was part of it, just trying to get everybody in the same seat. But talking to some folks now today, I almost feel like Michigan wanted this done before Christmas with Whittingham specifically. And just trying to get everybody in the room on the same day might have been a pain. So that makes me think Biff knew where this was going a few days ago already.
I just, as a fan of the team, and now knowing what I know, if it's in any way possible, I would like Biff Poggi to not be the head coach for this bowl game.
I had such a hard time with there's candidness and honesty, and obviously rival fans loved what he said about the 5 years dysfunction. And he's not completely wrong. Obviously, it's been instance after instance, right? But when you're the guy who was the right-hand man to the head coach, the one guy that couldn't be the yes man, you were the one that was supposed to be able to, because when you think about griping down and never up and whatever, in the way, not to get all military with it, but he was the one that was supposed to be the guy that could go to Jim and give that different perspective and be the culture guy. And we talked about how bad Chiron needed that after the first year. And he was brought in to do that again, to not be Chiron's yes man, to be able to go in a closed room and straighten him out, to give him the perspective, which again, hindsight, whatever, but we spoke about the Bryce Underwood stuff and running the ball and the conversations that were had there. Everybody's like, oh, Chiron's not at Nebraska now, Underwood's running. And my pushback on was that he's not doing that against his will. I don't know what the full conversation was behind the scene, blah, blah. But anyway, my point is you're in that role as right-hand man culture guy, and you're standing up there going, this place has been a disaster for 5 years. Make me the coach. I want to fix it. I thought of what's the show that Tim Robinson has?
I Think You Should Leave.
Yeah, where the hot dog guy crashes the car and he's there at the costume. Yeah, we're all trying to figure out who did this. Mm-hmm. Right. So like, as much as there was this vibe of not to pretend Harbaugh doesn't exist or be like, we're moving past this era, whatever, but like fresh eyes, whatever you want to call it. The continuity thing blew up, so now it's fresh start.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Biff was trying to be the fresh start and the Harbaugh tie at the same time.
Right. And so he wants credit for the titles, but the opportunity to cleanse the dysfunction for which he is somehow not responsible.
Oh, this is so wild.
Both ways.
Kyle Whittingham is literally traveling with Utah right now because he was gonna coach that bowl game.
He's like that gift that dude throws up the deuces and disappears.
Yeah, so he'll speak with the Utah team and then head to Orlando. And...
Yeah. Well, I mean,
boys, it's been real.
Yeah, I mean, if things kind of went,
he knew he wasn't going to be the head coach anyway because
right.
they'd already moved on to the DC. So.
Yeah, if things kind of went south as we think it did, and he was pushed out, he's like, screw you guys, I'm out of here. Like, I don't care. Like,
yeah, not to the kids though, obviously, right? Like we know that. But
I mean, whatever. Yeah. So about that Biff interview, I was told the spin on this is hilarious, and I'm not trying to call out anyone here, but I was told that he did that for gamesmanship purposes. He wanted Texas to feel too confident going into the bowl game, by Biff kind of talking about, I don't know who's going to be there, like, and all that stuff. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? Are you effing kidding me? You're going to use that as a spin? Like, Texas is perfectly fine on our own. It's like, man, like how no, there's no way like he's going to go on a podcast and then Texas is going to be like, oh, you know what, guys? We should not pay attention to these guys. We're going to win no matter what because he said something on a podcast. It's ridiculous. Well, and
we've seen again. I'm really obsessed.
Hey, do you guys want to meet my dad? You keep talking. Go ahead.
Sure.
Strengths and weaknesses. Sometimes you can lean too much into your strengths and then become negatives, and turning your weaknesses into something that doesn't destroy you, right? Like when we saw Saban and Biff talking, we were like, how cool is that? Right. And I have no doubt Biff has a relationship with Mac Brown. And that's what happened is they were having this cool, casual conversation. And it's like the realization that you are currently the head coach of Michigan. You can't say these things, bro. Right. Like, and we even talked about too with some of the spin that was happening around Dillingham. Yeah. And one thing I love Jim Harbaugh always did is he would encourage coaches to interview for jobs they weren't going to get. He's like, you need to go through this interview process and get the feedback and see, because you're not necessarily interviewing to be a football coach with the Regents. You know what I mean? There's so much more that comes with your job. And I think that's why, I mean, Josh can speak to this as well as anybody. The duality of Jim Harbaugh at the podium versus the guy you talk to when he stepped off the podium. Right. I know, I don't remember that was at that charity event right after the Shemi thing happened. And the conversation he was having with people there, just completely different. But he knew when he got up to the mic, it was a different world. And he loved making fun of the media because he thought we're a bunch of non-ball knowers. And these are stupid questions. They're like, I will always love his answer to Rayner. I feel like you already wrote your article and you're just trying to get me to say something.
Yeah. It is what it is. It's
there. It is.
It's. I'm just. Yeah.
49 minutes into the pod, we have an. It is what it is.
Yeah. I'm just hoping that, not necessarily for Michigan to be boring, but relative to what they have been, be boring. Because
there's a boring that exists.
I'm tired of trying to learn new things that I never thought I'd have to learn before, like Montana LLCs and all this kind of crap that I have no interest in knowing in the past. So I think that's a big win in itself. If he can make the program boring, you're already way ahead than where you were when you took it over. So Yeah, let's just hope that the distractions kind of die with the previous era and kind of move forward and hope for the best, I guess. I don't know how else you want to put it.
Yeah.
Oh boy. As far as Tony Alford, the assumption is that he's staying, but I've heard he hasn't had any formal discussions yet. But the likelihood of him staying, I would say, is pretty high, but he has yet to kind of formalize that stuff. So yeah, we'll just kind of see how that develops. But I'm kind of acting as if he's going to be back until told otherwise. So that's kind of where that is. So I just had a message like mid sentence. So I had to.
Sorry. Yeah, I spoke to a running back. I don't want to be too specific. So player and or recruit. And then he retweeted something his kid said too that I thought was just kind of like, so well, things changed. We thought Ben Herbert was staying, and he went to bed a Wolverine and woke up a Charger. So things obviously changed.
Right.
But
that's another thing too. I'll be curious about the strength and conditioning program. I would assume that Whittingham will bring his own staff with him, but I don't really know. I mean, you can point to the injuries this year and kind of say like, man, like, is there, should you be concerned because of the injuries? That I don't know. I'll be curious to see. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts that got to move here in short order to kind of get your ducks in a row for the portal and all that stuff. So,
by the way, so this is Michigan related, not entirely football related, but I just wanted.
Is your dad like waiting to come on though?
No. He came and went.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
So the new University of Michigan president sounds like it will be the incumbent president of Duke University, Vincent Price.
Heard it here first, folks.
The name. So good. Vincent Price. Do either of you know anything about this? I mean, I know. Let me rephrase that. I know you do. Do either of you know anything you want to say about this? How's that?
No.
Okay.
About the president?
Yeah.
As long as he doesn't as I told you guys, email women at night. I mean, again, you're ahead. You're ahead of the curve there. So,
and you can still be a professor at Michigan after the fact. It doesn't matter.
Right, exactly. So don't don't.
That's right. He's still a tenured professor, isn't he?
Yeah.
The Schliss. Yeah. The Schliss Knish.
List dog. Lonely.
Let's see what else is going on here.
Real quick, Nick, while you're digging.
Courtney Morgan.
That was one of the things I said we could bring up.
Bring it up.
So, Josh, you add what whatever. When I knew about Morgan's contact, which felt first tied to DeBoer, and then somewhat independent of DeBoer, and then spending time around Michigan learning the roster, that was in the context of he would come with DeBoer or Dillingham, right? Because there was this window where we were basically like, it's 95%. It's going to be one of the two. You just got to get the DeBoer people to accept it's going to be Dillingham, whatever, and that goes out. So I believe he would like a return to Michigan. I wrote a long article about the modernization of the structure above football with a president role and AM role. That wasn't an accident. I think that adding him, especially if you think about a structure, again, reasons I would really like a Whittingham hire a few days ago, if I'm adding Morgan and because he's here and it makes logical sense, and McGee moves to this president of football AD like role, because to be clear, Sean McGee's role is associate athletic director / general manager. He was one of these people we just like threw general manager duties at. And in that aspect, he's not highly paid compared to some other general managers, right? Now, we're not talking about a true NFL style like Stanford, where Andrew Luck is literally hiring and firing coaches, right? But a buffer or a higher ranking AD type person that oversees just football, a general manager that handles just roster stuff, in my opinion, if that was something that could happen in McGee would be happy with it because he obviously was interested in the athletic director role at Navy potentially. Like that kind of fits him. And Courtney Morgan, that is something I would love to see. Post DeBoer, Dillingham, whatever. I'll be honest, I haven't heard anything new on Morgan. Your average fan asks, why did Morgan leave in the first place? I mean, if I say just Harbaugh, is that okay? Like, right. So, but anyway, that's
it was kind of.
It was more than that. That wasn't fair, but
yeah, but at the same time, the most important thing is that he didn't burn any bridges in Ann Arbor. I mean, he's welcome back at any time. So I think that's the most important part is that, he left.
So good as Vincent Price, Bill Hader. So good.
The most important thing is he left, but he did not burn any bridges on the way out. I mean, he's welcome back if that's the case. But yeah.
And again, like I said, if Michigan's smart, they're pitching a role that is arguably more autonomous than what he even has at Bama right now.
Right.
That's how I would do it. But
yeah. I mean, the way it was explained to me was that he made contact with Michigan, and that's a good look for the podcast. Yeah, all 5,500 viewers right now are going to look at some dude.
Sorry, I forgot about that.
Off, and that's the image that pops up.
Some people who have no idea what that is are going to be so confused.
Oh, so good.
They're going to be so confused.
That's Big Boutros. That is Big Boutros right there. Oh my God. So
anyway, the way it was kind of described to me was that he made contact with Michigan or Michigan made contact with him, however you want to describe it.
Yeah.
There was rumors going around that he was actually in town, but I don't know if that happened. I'm not gonna really lean on that as fact, but I do know that there was a conversation taking place about the roster and all that kind of stuff. Now, does that lead to, him being hired down the road? Maybe. But there's really not much that's come out of that since this discussion took place, however it took form. So, I mean, I don't know if there is a connection of any kind between Courtney Morgan and Kyle Whittingham. I'd be interested in learning more about Whittingham's NIL philosophy and how he wants a program run in terms of that. I think that'll kind of really give us an idea of what he wants it to be, whether he's, more hands off or wants to be more involved. That'll be determined. But I mean, there's no excuse for Michigan to not, if they want to bring in a dedicated GM type and let McGee kind of, float as his own person in response to being responsible for the football program. I think they can realistically offer whoever they want. Whether they land them is a different story, but I mean, the resources and funds are there to land, whoever they need to land.
We're at an hour already, but do you guys have a little bit more time? There's two things I kind of wanted to hit on.
I've got all day.
Nick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I want to look back and forward. We touched on it, obviously. I talked about the high valleys and then kind of this straight line of consistency. We didn't spend a ton of time post that Oklahoma loss, Bama win, obviously. Dillingham, no fish, and then Whittingham. But what was interesting to me was when the stuff started coming out, I spoke to somebody with the Packers about Stenovich, right? The offensive coordinator obviously has Michigan ties. There were some other coordinator names thrown out there. And I, from the beginning, was like, I wonder if they'd interview Stenovich to be a potential coordinator for whoever the new coach is, because he's not even calling the plays in Green Bay. The head coach thing didn't make sense. But again, trying to find, whatever. And the Jeff Brom thing. Because again, you spoke with Louisville people with On3, and we were speaking, and it's always interesting. There's the Michigan side and then the other side, right? With Arizona State, like, yeah, Dillingham's interested in this, and yeah, we're nervous, and yeah, Arizona State's got to do this. And Louisville's like, he's not going. Like, he's probably trying to push to get his extension done that they've been working on. The same thing happened at Penn State. Like that felt like an agent serving too. And then Todd Monken's name comes out too. And it's a similar thing where I'm like, okay, I can see it, but like, I don't know if that was literally like, God, let's delay this a few days until the Whittingham thing gets announced, right? But I think you'll find that it really wasn't as chaotic. Because again, whenever there's a big story and an information void, we like to fill it. And there's a lot of folks on this podcast and folks that subscribe to Maize and Blue Review, which thank you if you do. And if you don't, 50% off right now. Good time to take advantage. Shameless plug. But if somebody is just like the casual fans, like, oh, they hired Kyle Whittingham, cool. They have no idea about the rocky waves and things we've gone through the last couple of weeks. So I was very interested with some of these coordinator interviews or some of these misdirections like the Braum thing. Because again, I just never saw it with Braum. And going back to the floor thing, because people have asked me like, hey, how did you feel about the hire? Look, I had DeBoer and Dillingham in a separate tier, I think. And obviously you could sell me on Whittingham over Dillingham because of experience and stuff too. But like, I like Dillingham's ceiling and maybe the next landing. But that next tier that we were realistically in at this point, Whittingham or Braum, like give me Whittingham or Fish. I know there's a lot of Jed Fish lovers, but I probably would have been more on board with Whittingham because I think people are obsessed with Jed Fish from 1 year at Michigan and so on and so on. But anyway, I know we kind of talked on it already settling, but like now him and potentially the guys he's bringing, once like the dust of all this settles and he's actually on a plane to Michigan and the portal decisions are getting made and like players are getting added and moving around, do you think it's going to feel shockingly normal? Like,
yeah,
the Chiron explosion was like, not just like we knew things were going on, but then like how quickly fired and oh my God, the cops are looking for him. And then this coaching search. And it just feels like in a couple weeks, like this, I mean, maybe I'm just being optimistic, but I feel like some normal already is kind of settling in.
Well, I think normal is relative too. I think normal to what, Michigan fans have experienced over the last 3 years. I mean, I think, a quiet off season is exactly what they need. In terms of negative headlines, positive headlines are always a good thing, of course, but I just think what this program needs is some peace and quiet, first of all, and some stabilization. I think they just need some time to breathe, like weeks worth of quiet, of just letting things sit and just letting Whittingham go to work, and hopefully have no one else do anything dumb between now and the start of the season or whatever it is. Just kind of letting things go and letting things breathe, so to speak, will be much needed for the program and really the athletic department as a whole. Once this report comes out in January and they hire a new president, they can just kind of move forward and react to things that they need to react to in terms of what comes out in the report and all that stuff. Some peace and quiet is probably the best medicine for this athletic department as a whole moving forward.
Speaking of peace and quiet, you guys carry on. Sounds like I gotta go. I thank you both.
Yeah.
Do I just hit the red button? Keep going. Keep going.
I'll take care of it.
Okay.
Boop. There he goes.
Yep.
No, obviously glad to have Nick join us.
Mm-hmm.
Long time friend of myself, and obviously as Big Boutros on our message board. I was excited to have his insight. This is a good point. Compared to the firing, the hire was always going to feel normal.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh, I would love it. Do you think they start to let the media back into practices and stuff?
Oh, Bryce Go Blue, you're a funny cat. You're a funny cat. He's
like
bringing
I said,
the jokes.
There's elements of this that are Michigan is always going to Michigan, but I hope there is kind of this true look inside of, again, I've talked about this multiple times, so I apologize, dead horse, and it might feel overblown. But again, when a program is so obsessed about not releasing a depth chart, as if any idiot watching a game can't figure out what your depth chart is, right? The weird lies, I'm going to call it that, lies about injuries. again, you don't have to tell us everything. There is HIPAA pieces to it. I'm not saying I got to know every detail. We don't post injuries on the board sometimes because it's just not, I'm not into that speculating business. Sometimes it's not necessarily our business to share, but like going up to a podium and just lying about injuries is, using us in ways that you think helps you. And, some of it's just unnecessary. And again, I think it creates this really weird mindset of not letting things out. So I'm fine with Michigan being Michigan to a point and the way they've done things. But I wouldn't mind Whittingham coming in and offering his views on stuff where like, hey, maybe it's an 80-20 thing in terms of effort. Right.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I have no idea how he runs media,
don't even get me started on their working through something. Yeah. Well, Johnson, hey, could have gone back in, didn't play.
Yeah.
Again.
Right. God, if I had $1 for every time I heard that, could have played, but he didn't. Okay. So why didn't he play?
Yeah.
Anyway. I don't know how Whittingham runs his program from a media standpoint. So I really don't have, an opinion either way, because I don't know, A, if he cares, or B, he's just going to say, just do what you've been doing and, it's fine. So we'll just kind of have to see. I mean, changes would be welcomed. Being able to have more access would be a good thing in my mind. I don't know how people in Michigan would feel, but it comes down to Whittingham's opinion. And I don't know what that looks like in terms of like a weekly coverage standpoint during the season. So, some fresh starts, some fresh perspectives in that regard would be helpful. But considering it's Michigan, I don't expect much to change there in that regard. But maybe I'll be surprised. We'll see.
So real quick, we'll finish on this. Hold on. I was trying to see if this is something I want to report now. Okay. So this is, I don't know if dumb's not the right answer, but like there's so much unknown of what the staff will finalize to be, what the roster will look like moving forward. So win-loss record is a completely different animal. But where are you if we start to think about, like, as absurd as this is, like, I'm going to be talking about spring position battles in the next couple months. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, and again, that's a lot of the roster, that stuff's going to come together. But this was a team that I think, with Chiron Moore coming back, we were saying like, this is going to be a big year. The schedule is going to be tough, but all these young players that got experience, like Michigan's got to compete for a playoff spot. We got to see them take this next step. Does the way things, because like Nick's point, now we almost look at this 9-3, you're like, oh my gosh, like how with everything they were dealing with, how much better was it? So
sure.
Again, this is probably too early for this, but just kind of big picture. Do you think coming into this year, expectations will almost rise with the reset in the new staff? Is there not lower expectations, but a buffer of play for almost like, hey, you know what? The biggest thing people wanted from a continuity hire from Jim Harbaugh was Michigan to still look the same.
Right.
We talked about like, you can lose games. How do you lose them? Right. And that was like the turning point of positivity at the end of 2024. And so much of the negativity here was, it wasn't just that you lost to Oklahoma and USC and got beat by Ohio State. It was how you got beat.
Right.
And the mistakes they were making and the little fundamental things. So is it enough to just see that improve, which I think seems like a given, right? Giving Whittingham's experience and everything, is I think you're just going to see a smarter, more fundamental football team. Yeah. But yeah, again, big picture, there's no point talking about 9-3, 10 and none of that, but what would you start to categorize expectations are short and long term? Because again, that's where I know people are like, oh, he's 66, which he looks great for 66. Right. But where do you think expectations, wow, start to fall for folks as this thing comes together?
Yeah. I think a lot of it kind of will be predicated on what's next. The domino effect of, hiring Whittingham, like what happens next. I can't sit here and say, oh, Michigan will have 0% portal entries or guys entering, asking out of their LOIs or whatever. I mean, we saw it today with Brady. Was it Marchese? Yeah, we saw that today. So I can't.
Marchese.
Yeah, I can't sit here and say Michigan's going to have 100% retention rate.
No, and they wouldn't have anyway.
Right, exactly. No matter who they hired, they were going to have some guys leave. But the big thing is that can you offset losses with portal ads? And, if you're hiring, let's say they hire Jay Hill from BYU, which right now he's the top choice to be defensive coordinator, that opens you up to adding potentially some pretty good BYU players. And then not to mention on the offensive side of the ball with Utah, you've got guys that you can pick through if you want through the portal. So I think a lot of it with expectations is are you keeping your core intact or mostly intact? Like if you're going to have a loss or two, can you absorb those losses? And I think a lot of people in Ann Arbor are kind of expecting like guys like Bryce Underwood to come back. You hope that Andrew Marsh comes back, but if you keep that, if you
that'll make you laugh when I just text you.
If you keep that, as in perspective in terms of keeping the core.
I broke you with that one.
I know you did. You broke my brain on that one.
But let's be honest. I know everybody, the transfer portal date, like, January 2nd, the players at Michigan have been getting talked to already. Like Marsh to Texas rumors existed long before,
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm so sorry for doing that.
No, it's okay. Yeah. So I think a lot of it, depends on the staff and who they hire and whether these guys are going to be, the defensive and offensive coordinators, whether these are going to be the guys. And then you have to think about the subsequent transfers. Like, does Michigan lose someone that they weren't expecting to lose and vice versa?
Right.
And then the additions that they will undoubtedly make, regardless of whether they lose guys or not, I think is important too. So, as I sit here with the Michigan program in its current state, with Whittingham not yet officially announced, I think it's fair to have expectations of being competitive in the playoff, because in my mind, if Michigan can win 9 games, considering the mess that program was behind the scenes, they can do anything once they have kind of that, the distractions eliminated and the noise and all that stuff. Yes, I say all this with that in mind, that the schedule next year is brutal. Am I going to sit here right now and say, oh yeah, Michigan is going to absolutely make the playoffs? I don't know enough about this team yet, because I don't know who their offensive coordinator is going to be. And I'm assuming their quarterback's Bryce Underwood next year. So we don't know enough to really say, oh yeah, Michigan's going to win X amount of games next year. I think they can be competitive in the conference. Absolutely. Just because Whittingham has that track record of getting his guys ready for big moments and big games. So, yeah, I mean, I can't realistically sit here and say, oh yeah, Michigan's going to rattle off, the next 3 Big Ten championships. They'll be competitive. Absolutely. They'll be physical. They'll be coached much better with intensity, and, paying attention to those minute details is really the big difference for this team. And once you get that, the lack of, like, the daunting schedule seems a little less daunting when you've got, guys just going out there and producing. So, I mean, 9 and 10 wins realistically, Michigan is a position where 9 and 10 wins should be the floor every year. With an expanded playoff of 12, and if it goes higher to 16, if it goes to 16, yeah, you should expect to be in the playoff every single year. 12, you may be, depending on what your team looks like, you might have to win games you're not supposed to win. But that's what Whittingham does really well too, is that when he has his program set up to win games that they don't necessarily win normal. Like you shouldn't be winning on paper. So there's a lot of moving parts, but I think, it's fair to have high expectations for Michigan. I mean, it's Michigan football. I mean, you're supposed to have high expectations, and you're a couple of years removed from a national championship. So there's no reason to not expect to compete for a playoff spot every year.
I'm going to knock out a couple things before I share my thoughts here. I like this a lot. Play style will be hardball adjacent. I don't think just scheme. I think scheme wise, and we'll get into that over the coming months. There's a lot of exciting next steps that I think you can expect with Whittingham and potentially adjacent back offense in terms of personnel and things they do to be a little bit more creative and explosive in the passing game. But look, I do think it's almost ironic. Not only is this farther from continuity in Harbaugh, this is the furthest Michigan has been from Bo or, Michigan, man, whatever, ever. Right? But yet it's going to look a lot like Michigan because it's going to be everything you said, physical, smart, one in the trenches. So I think it shows too, it's got to happen. There have been home run hires that are busts and boring hires that become home run hires. We don't know. I've said that forever. But it's just kind of ironic. This could be a very Michigan football move, hiring somebody from Utah, right? But yes, Darbo, hi. Just says Trevor. Yeah. What's up,
Darbo?
Somebody commented on that. I think the Cignetti thing is such a good point. All the people freaking out about Witt's age wanted Cignetti potentially, right? So it's not how old you are, it's how old you feel, right?
The game has changed so much now, is that you're not playing for 5 years down the road. You're playing for right now. I mean, again, and which goes right back to the Cignetti argument. He's proven that you can become elite in an off season. And say what you will about the schedule and all that kind of stuff for Indiana the past couple of years. You don't apologize for the schedule, but it shows that, that with this transfer portal and all that stuff, you're not playing for 5 years down the road. You're playing for right now. And the windows that you're in, and they're so fleeting. I mean, they're just so fleeting, because who knows what Indiana is going to look like next year. I mean, they're going to have to reload quite a bit. So
you didn't know that with Cignetti. No, I think that's the funny thing too. Cignetti is sent shockwaves through college football, because now every program's like, well, if he can do it at Indiana,
right?
Do you know how it's one of the greatest stories in college football history, because it never happens,
right? Yeah. Now every single hire is going to be unfairly
trying to duplicate that is crazy. It was a perfect storm of a guy under Saban who had all this experience, who was able to bring the right mix of James Madison people and seniors in the transfer portal and seniors in Indiana, just wild, right? But
and let's call it like it is too. I mean, Indiana has resources. It's not like there's some poor, destitute program. They've got some really wealthy donors.
When Bryant Haynes' name came up, I was like, for DC, that'd be interesting. And I'm like, he makes how much in Indiana?
No, yeah, that's the reason why, is so people don't talk to him for a head coaching job. But I mean, it helps. Fit is incredibly important. B, support is incredibly important.
That's a really good point.
C, resources, and then I guess D can also be, attached to, having people that can provide those resources is important too. And he's got all of those at Indiana, and that program or that university was desperate for a winner of some sort. So yeah, I mean, it helps a lot.
To their point, getting great quarterback play, right?
Yeah, that too. I mean,
somebody said, do you think they would keep Tony Alford? It would be dumb if they don't. I don't think the decision is about keeping. It's about him for sure saying he's going to stay. Michigan knows keeping Tony Alford is a huge deal. I promise you, Whittingham's not an idiot and knows he's a top 3 to 5 running back coach in the country and responsible for a loaded running back room. Yeah. I fully expect him to stay at this point. They just got to get it done. I don't think there's a decision where Michigan goes, no, we're not keeping Tony Alford.
Right, exactly. Yeah, they'd be incredibly stupid to not keep.
Last thing, the Dampier noise coming out of Utah. Dampier is going to leave Utah and go somewhere else, I would imagine, highly likely. I think that either Utah itself or a post that was put out there is being misinterpreted. As of right now, I don't think Dampier's coming to Michigan.
Yeah.
I think he's more than likely going somewhere else. I know people are like, wait, does that mean Bryce is gone? Again, these things can change overnight, but the initial reading of a post that got out there, I don't know which board it was on, seemed to suggest for some folks like, oh, Bryce is already gone and Dampier's coming with. That is not the expectation in any circles right now. So.
I will say this though. I mean, we're obviously not waiting for the Underwood, shoe to drop. But if for some reason he did leave, then yes, you could absolutely make that connection.
Right. It's nice to have that connection there.
So it kind of just, we'll have to see what happens. I'm not concerned that Underwood is leaving, but if there is the odd chance that he does leave before Dampier has a decision of what he wants to do, then yeah, I mean, you can almost pretty much not guarantee.
I agree. I agree with this. I think he's going to Arizona State.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
All right. For me, expectations, I think it's as simple as, I was very pro Chiron in terms of the way that he attacked. I want to because anything I say now is going to sound funny in past context, right? So I'm trying to make sure I get through this. Okay. The things I was very pro Chiron about though was when there was a problem or something that needed to be fixed at Michigan, he was very vocal about what his plan would be. We saw those things get implemented and success arise from the recruiting department and fixing the issues with compliance and the communication that existed there, just the way recruiting happened in general, the issues that existed with Kirk Campbell and the offensive staff, the quick move there, even the special teams fire at the end of the year. I know some folks probably would have liked to see Brown let go during the year. I don't want to get any of the politics on that, but that kind of felt like a move where like, here's a guy not scared to admit where these faults are. Right. And it was easy to tie a lot of the things that we were seeing on the field to a young team dealing with injuries and a young head coach. Like, oh, he's bad with timeouts. Well, yeah, he's new to being a head coach. And it was kind of like, for me, it's like, okay, the best case scenario is he's Marcus Freeman because he lost games he shouldn't have and went through kind of these same little learning curves. Like that would be the best case scenario. And you talk to folks and you're not hearing, or you're hearing about issues, but they're not framed in the full context of what is reality now that's out there. Right. So now it's like, man, I just want, was it you or Nick that said the thing about being, I think it was Nick that just said being proud of Michigan football.
Yeah. Yeah.
To your point for earlier too, for us, like covering, I'd love to just talk about football again. That's my expectations, right? Individual actions are going to occur. They happen at every single program. People are going to make mistakes. How do you handle those mistakes when they happen? What do you turn a one-day story into a 1 week story? Were people not doing what they were supposed to do in that context? Can we just talk about football? And is there a football coach at Michigan who, again, is going to be a good football coach and the team's going to look well coached and leaders of men and all that cheesy cliche crap you take for granted when it's gone, right? Like that solid foundation, those expectations, that's the expectations for me. And then building on top of that, let's go. Right. But I think Michigan is just in desperate need for stability and pride from reality and action and not word. The leaders and best, the people that get worshipped at Michigan, the Michigan man mantra, which is not Bo's fault. It's become something completely different. Yeah. All of that is irrelevant. And frankly, it's bullshit. And all your rivals are right when you make a mockery of it. And it's why they say you're smug and you're arrogant and all of those things. Because when you say it and the actions don't match up, it's true, man. And Michigan, this is a good step in my eyes because, again, he does feel distant in many ways. There's a way to match those culture and values with somebody who shares them because they happen to share them and not just because they attended Michigan. Sometimes you can have the culture and values you speak of from other places. It's okay, right? So just getting their shit together, man. Is that too much to ask for?
Yeah.
Don't be embarrassing.
I am glad that you mentioned the fact that
Sorry, I didn't mean to get that fired up, but
it's fine. I mean, it's true. Like it's accurate. What you said is accurate. I think the positive about the previous regime of Michigan football was that they were willing to kind of look. I want to be careful how I word this because it's not how it looks now. But how they were willing to kind of look inwardly in terms of where their flaws were and address them in terms of the stuff that they could talk about without getting themselves fired. But in terms of, I mentioned kind of beefing up NIL efforts, with Chiron willing to kind of put in effort to get donor funds, beefing up the NIL, the recruiting department, adding more pieces to it, having structure. My hope is that continues with Whittingham, is that he can also identify areas to fix and beef up and kind of revolutionize the recruiting department a little bit further, revolutionized kind of the NIL and the connections there too. And there's, and to be clear, there's no proof out there that, Whittingham is a guy that's stuck in his ways and isn't willing to adapt to the times. He's pretty
Utah just had a great class.
Right, exactly.
They beat Michigan for an offensive line top recruit.
Right.
Kelvin
So
Oba.
the kind of the general hope is that he can come in and with these resources that he's never ever had before, to take things to the next level. I hope that push continues moving forward.
And I think too, when you talk to, again, because everyone's like, oh, Chiron had money. Well, he deserves credit for that. That didn't come out of nowhere, right? And I think there's a floor for Michigan where it recruits itself top 15 just being Michigan, right? And to your point, shout out to Champion Circle and shout out to Valiant, who have not only done a lot in the last year with this roster and the players and translating roster retention into community action. I'm sure at some point it's going to come out. They had a huge impact on this hire as well. Mm-hmm. That's all I'll say. Michigan has a lot of really good foundational pieces in place. You bring in the third party of Altius, the relationship that exists among the people that are hired inside Michigan, that circle of three for NIL, it's there. And again, with the right GM relationship position with the head coach and staff, everything's there to get things in motion. So yeah, that's the expectation. See those things moving positively in a good direction for sure. So, okay. I mean, we could talk all night. Real quick. Oh, that's a small way of doing it. I should have done that the whole time. Bummer. I thought I had it somewhere else. Maybe I don't. Okay. So just a reminder, because a lot of folks on here, I recognize names, are obviously subscribers, Maize and Blue Review. 50% off right now your first year, not like week trial, whatever, half off your entire first year. Gets you access to all of the On3 premium content, all of the Rivals recruiting premium content, all of the Michigan premium content, all of our intel, and access to our message board, the Den and community, being able to post inside there. Would love to have you. We've seen a lot of new folks come in during the search, and we've gotten a lot of good feedback from folks during the search as well. So for those of you watching, thank you. Obviously our YouTube channel as well. If you're not liked and subscribed, notification bell. Dennis goes live very frequently he was live today with Good Afternoon Michigan and post-game shows. There is I know they're not literally, but the number one basketball team in the country. Can we be real about this? The Michigan Wolverines. I mean, there's your expectations. Yep. What am I thinking? There it is. I want Michigan next year, the number one team in the country, a favorite for the national championship. I mean, Dusty May is the closest thing to Signetti on the basketball end, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, technically an outsider. Obviously Dusty's a little younger and I don't know, like charismatic or whatever. But again, that goes to show you, if you've got the resources and you've got guys in there who can A, scout really well and identify talent, and B, land that talent, there's no reason why you can't be competitive in a short time. I mean, obviously roster size in basketball is different, and you can't compare the two fully, but the resources are there. they're waiting to be tapped into. You just got to give them something to believe in. And that's kind of what the big thing is right now. And what's been missing is that really no one has anything to believe in right now. And having a guy like Whittingham, who has a track record of success and building a program, that's really easy to buy into, and especially and continue to buy into if they win. So, yeah, I mean, you've got limitless potential right now, in terms of building on what you're inheriting.
I'll end on this because it's so true. The only scale we have about how good the football team will be next year is Michigan is undefeated in basketball. Was it 2018? Maybe it was like the 1 year where they were both higher a little bit. We should have known how bad things were going to get in football when things got so good in basketball. The ecosystem is hilarious because it does feel like they're constantly in some weird balance. But anyway, all right, I am hungry and we probably have a lot more work to do yet. So hour and a half on here. Thank you. We've had over 6,000 viewers pretty consistently through this podcast. So thank you all for spending a Friday evening with us while we dissect some of this news as it happened. Literally, we'll have more coverage again, plenty to talk about as these things start to roll out. With, I almost forgot his name. I almost called him like Kirk Pitting. I don't know what name. I almost combined him and Kenny and Dylan. Anyway, with Kyle Whittingham, Michigan head coach. Man, that feels weird to say. That's going to take a minute. Thanks, Steve. Yep, throw it out there. Circuit City reference. It was almost time. Thanks for the Circuit City gift cards. We almost made it without it. Anyway, all right. So we'll be back. Hail the podcast. I don't know if we'll do Sunday. Maybe, because we'll probably have enough information. But again, make sure you're finding us.
Yeah, it all depends.
Huh?
It all depends on what happens next couple of days.
But I promise you, we're going to be posting nonstop on the board and plenty of content over at Maize and Blue Review. Go to on3.com, search Maize and Blue Review. Take advantage of the 50% off promo. Otherwise, we'll see you here soon. Thanks again for joining us. Hail to the podcast.